Zach here from Gravel Bike California, returning to Gold Country as we're going to go graveling around the Auburn State Recreation Area. This region might be the most renowned in the state for its trails, not just for biking, but also for trail running as well. At the same time, so many footprints here from the Gold Rush era. It's amazing how much is scattered around, and I'm sure we'll come across some of it. So, it's golden them thar hills, let's roll! I was looking forward to another return to Gold Country, as Vic and I made it out a couple years earlier, just a few miles north along the North Fork of the American River. That can be deceptive when you hear the words Sierra Foothills, as our floor today would be lower than the San Fernando Valley, meaning it gets a good deal hotter here most of the year than you'd think. I rode out of town to meet Martin, immediately getting into the Auburn State Recreation Area, taking me right across the landmark Foresthill Bridge, that you don't fully get a sense of its scale if you're just pedaling through, giving an amazing perspective of the surroundings, and if you could stomach the depth below, which is why the community takes so much care in understanding the dangers behind this engineering. But our start was another 5 miles up the road, seeing mining remnants cut into the hill from afar, meeting up with Martin with 2 pro tips. 1, be ready to pay $10 for parking, and 2, call ahead to coordinate that there's no wardrobe match going on. The parking lot at this trailhead was understandably empty, as temps were already in the high 80s, with avoiding the barbed wire being just the secondary fear, starting out on a western appendage of the Foresthill Divide Loop that circles the main road for 8.2 miles, as we had about a half mile to reach the main loop, which all the parts comprised of single track, with our portion offering nothing but uphill, yet seemed strangely flat all around, with this segment wrapping up quickly.
That is as technical as it gets. And most of the time it's what I would call a great cross-country trail. Single track all the way, it's tons of fun.
It was appropriate to count in seconds, not minutes when we found the road. Crossing back, being aware of the high speeds, we continued going counterclockwise on Foresthill Divide Loop, where we had our last quick direction change for a while.
We're gonna ride down the connector trail, which is tons of fun. And it's so weird. It's probably my favorite part of this whole park.
Oh, wow. As this 3.5 mile sector waited for us with some ups and downs, but overall trending downward, I'm glad I didn't have to spend a wish on Martin leading me out, as obviously you don't see much of what's in front of you, and starting off at these speeds plays into this dilemma, making sure your technical game is on part juggling these rollers with your tree avoidance skills, where you must buy into what gravity is handing you. With the trail in pretty good shape considering all the angles, but focus is still necessary, as I was glad I didn't wear my darker glasses into these shadows, seeing this much sky a true rarity, and the presence of architecture that spans even more scarce. When we transitioned to our little bit of climbing, Martin pointed out the sign in the opposite direction to warn those coming to us to stay alert where we were downhilling, as sometimes we were the ones being easy targets, meaning taking a seat when the opportunity arises didn't feel out of place, as my first look upward gave a unique view how the trees stretched to the sky. And if all this is too much for you, there's an early out onto Lake Clementine Road, but Gravel Bike California is here to report on gravel, as the last mile finished off steadily, meaning I approve this trail assessment. Exiting out onto pavement, we came across the trail option for later, off of our climb up Old Foresthill Road, but that was a decision we could put off for now, as taking Lake Clementine Road was a nice change of pace, with its incredible smoothness assisting the descent that at a steady 7% over a mile and a half almost goes by too fast, that you might miss the chance to pull over to catch a view of the Lake Clementine Dam that's been on the job since 1939, And once you've picked up speed again, you've also got to be aware of staying on the pavement to continue down dirt, where you give away more elevation for the next mile. So much that you can't stop thinking of the consequences, that you're gonna have to climb out of this at some point. And coming up on the Foresthill Bridge reiterates this opus, as its scale is monumental in person, as the fourth highest bridge built in the US in 1973. That was meant as a crossing over the Auburn Dam that was never constructed, standing 730 feet above the American River, with the remnants of the former Foresthill Bridge right past, as we were unknowingly on the old road, headed towards the new bridge, which crossing messes with your orientation, but at least seeing other cyclists kept us grounded, trying not to be too distracted to enjoy the confluence of the North and Middle Forks, to miss the bathrooms, but not any water there on the other side, with our turnoff back across the river right ahead, coming up on the appropriately numbered Highway 49, making a left across this more modern span, seeing the 1912 no-hands bridge standing firm downstream, with our next stretch of dirt coming up after a short climb. After cautiously crossing the highway, with a short jaunt through the parking lot, we entered the Quarry Trail, once again starting with signs of some well-maintained dirt, understandingly giving back some elevation, this time following the middle fork of the American River, that was nice and easy for the first mile and a half, as our environs got more interesting off of this turn, not just because verticality got reintroduced, but the surroundings needed some explaining to do, as this collection of these concrete pilings looked very specific and even worthy of an Indiana Jones reboot, ducking in for more of us to discover, finding the entrance to this limestone mining cave in operation from 1912 to 1941 that may have had some visitors before. Feeling like I should be exiting in the Batmobile, we had another 4 miles left on the Quarry Trail. And even though we stayed within 200 feet of elevation, the trail did not show much consistency, unlike the heavy number of runners we'd come across that were battling the heat with us lockstep, as coming through creek crossings in faded conditions wasn't the most surprising part, but just how the trail couldn't find just one type of surface, going from wide and rocky to narrow and smooth. Not to mention how hot it was, even with these green pockets. But the biggest issue should be apparent with these visuals, that you don't want to brush up against poison oak, making me feel fortunate I didn't wear my gravel sandals, especially for the couple of loose and steep pitches where you don't want to fall over into it. But at least Martin has expert experience.
Okay, you crossed before me.
I thought I had it.
The raggediness helped brush off the end of the segment, with the signage noting the turnaround point for us, coming across this historical marker for Main Bar, which was one of the noted locations for gold mining, set up in 1858, and while the trail does continue on, the rest was off limits to bikes, including this one from my trail running days. But before we left, it was time to play America's favorite game, Are These Scratches from Poison Oak? Meaning, I was going to try and be more cautious on the way back, for more reasons that I had mapped out, and I shared the sentiments of these other cyclists that it was better to be by the river, but the reality was we were absorbing more heat like this, even though we were getting a bit more speed in this direction, as technically we were losing more elevation, still needing to take another pause underneath our earlier mining encounter that had a lot more detailed information to add, not to mention more relics to find, putting behind our last section of dirt, but maybe that was a good thing. Still in our reversing course phase, you don't think of doing anything else other than jumping in that water, as climbing up Old Foresthill Road feels like the opposite, averaging a steady but unwelcome 7% for the first 2 miles. And over what seems like a very short time, the Quarry Trail looks so minute below. Realizing my struggle was aided by my gearing being off, wishing I had stopped into Victory Velo in town before the ride, as once again, they were super helpful in fixing after, which might have made the climb feel like this, with a good amount of let up on the upper half of Old Foresthill, as I realized my last bottle was running dry, soon merging back onto the newer Foresthill, hammering out the final mile and a half to finish off the day, while others may just be getting started on a ride that packed a lot of punch in these short miles.
Auburn, what can I really say? I mean, this is its own perfect little universe. It's not as well renowned as Yosemite, but at the same time, with the great views and super trails, I'm glad this is a place just for people in the know. I think that's why I keep coming back. Anyways, you want to support us? Go ahead, hit the subscribe button, or go to our shop, or support us on Patreon, so we can bring you more. And stay dirt!